A single mother, lost and desperate, forced to return to the crumbling memory of her childhood, a storm outside, a storm inside, and then a frozen stranger appears in the snow clutching a letter meant for someone long gone. What Leah found that night changed not just her future, but rewrote the past. Welcome to another soul-stirring journey on storytelling and beyond, where every story touches the heart and leaves a lasting truth behind. Leah's hands were numb as she fumbled with the old brass key. The wind howled behind her like a warning, tearing through her coat seams and rattling the loose wooden panels of the porch. She glanced down at her daughter, Mia, whose small hand gripped hers tightly, blue eyes wide with fear and cold. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Leah had always been independent until layoffs hit her office and she found herself with nowhere to go, no one to lean on. Her mother had passed years ago, her friends now distant shadows. Her only choice was this. Her grandfather's abandoned cottage on the edge of Maple Hollow, untouched for nearly a decade. The key finally clicked. The door groaned open, heavy with years of silence. Leah pushed it slowly, revealing a dust-choked hallway. The cold inside was worse than the wind, sharp, cruel. But it was shelter. It had to be enough. She stepped in cautiously, guiding Mia across the threshold. The floors creaked like old bones. The wallpaper peeled like tired skin. Yet there was something almost sacred about it, a forgotten shrine of her childhood memories. The rocking chair still sat by the fireplace. Her grandfather's carved walking stick leaned against the corner. And the smell of old paper, pinewood, and sorrow was everywhere. "We'll make it work," Leah whispered, more to herself than to her daughter. She spread out the small sleeping bag in front of the hearth and wrapped Mia in all the blankets she had. The girl didn't complain. Just stared with quiet trust at her mother, believing as only children can. Leah tried to start a fire, the way she remembered her grandfather doing. It took time, but eventually, warmth crackled through the room in flickers of orange and gold. She gave Mia a snack and promised to return quickly. There was an old shed behind the house that might still have chopped wood or supplies. Every gust of wind as she stepped outside stung her face, but she pushed forward through the rising snow. That's when she saw it. At first, it looked like a pile of rags, or maybe a deer collapsed near the edge of the forest. But then she noticed movement, a faint twitch, a breath. Her heart slammed in her chest as she rushed forward, boots crunching through snow and brittle twigs. It was a man. Older, dressed in layers that looked soaked and useless against the cold. His beard was thick with ice, and his face was nearly gray. But what struck her most, what stopped her in her tracks, was the tightly clenched envelope in his hand. Even as his body trembled and his eyes fluttered closed, his fingers refused to let go of that letter. "Sir," she said, kneeling. "Can you hear me?" No answer. She had no idea who he was. A drifter? Someone lost in the woods? But instinct took over. She gripped his arms, dragging his limp body through the snow, struggling step by step back toward the cabin. He was heavier than he looked, but she couldn't let him die. Inside, the fire blazed stronger now. Leah stripped off the man's wet layers and wrapped him in every warm cloth she could find. She placed warm rags on his forehead, added water to a pot over the fire, and covered him with Mia's blankets too. Mia peeked out from her corner. "Who is he, Mommy?" "I don't know," Leah whispered, still watching him breathe, "but I think he needs us." The envelope lay beside him now, slightly crumpled. No name. No address. Just old handwriting faded by time. Leah stared at it. And something. Curiosity, worry, perhaps destiny, urged her closer. The next morning, sunlight spilled softly through the frosted windows, casting golden threads across the creaky wooden floor. The old man was still asleep, alive, but barely stirring. His breath came in shallow, slow rhythms. Leah placed a trembling hand on his forehead. The fever had broken, thank God. But questions now burned brighter than the fire behind her. Who was this man? And why had fate led him, almost frozen to death, to this forgotten house in the middle of nowhere? Leah's eyes fell again on the letter. It still rested beside him, as if guarding a truth too sacred to leave his hand for long. She picked it up gently, heart pounding in her chest. The envelope was brittle, the edges curled with time. On the back, in faint cursive, were just 4 words. To Henry, with hope. Henry. Her grandfather's name. Leah sank slowly into the nearby chair, her mind spinning. Had this man come here, looking for her grandfather? But Henry had passed nearly 7 years ago. She hesitated, then carefully opened the letter. The handwriting inside was familiar, too familiar. It was her grandmother's. Dearest Henry. If this ever reaches you, it means I finally found someone who could carry it through. I never stopped loving you, not for a single moment, even after the war took everything from us. If life gives us no chance to meet again in this world, I want you to know you saved me more than once, with your kindness, your strength, your belief in people. I pray someone shows you the same when you need it most. Tears clouded Leah's vision. Her grandmother had passed when she was a teenager. She had never heard anything about a letter like this. And yet here it was, carried through snow, clutched in the hand of a stranger, arriving as if summoned by some forgotten promise. A low groan from the blanket broke her thoughts. The man stirred, coughing faintly, then blinked against the dim morning light. Where am I? He rasped. You're safe, Leah said softly, kneeling beside him. You were outside in the snow. I brought you in. He looked at her, confused, then his gaze found the letter. The house, is this Henry's house? His voice cracked with emotion. It was. He was my grandfather, she said slowly. He passed years ago. The old man shut his eyes tightly, tears welling up. Alan. Henry saved me in 1968. I was young, broke, and ready to give up. He let me stay in this cabin. Gave me a second chance. I've been looking for him ever since, to return something that belonged to his wife. Leah's throat tightened. Alan stared at the fire. I wanted to give it to him in person. But I was too late. No, she whispered, voice trembling. Maybe not. Maybe you were meant to give it to me. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a dusty photo album. She opened it to a picture of her grandparents, Henry and Grace. Standing in front of this very cabin in 1965, arms wrapped around each other, smiling like the world was enough for just the two of them. Alan stared at the photo. Then something in him broke. His body shook, not from cold, but from memory. He talked about her all the time, Alan said. He told me once. Real love doesn't die. It just waits. The three of them sat quietly, Leah, Mia, and Alan, as the morning sun warmed the windows. Something in the room shifted. The air felt fuller. As if the past had come to visit, not to haunt, but to heal. For the first time in years, Leah felt something she hadn't known she'd lost. A reason to believe again. That evening, the snow had slowed to a quiet drizzle, blanketing the world outside in soft silence. Inside the old cabin, the fire crackled steadily, filling the room with warmth as Leah prepared a pot of stew. Mia was curled up on the couch with a tattered book, her tiny legs swinging as she read aloud in her sweet, careful voice. Alan, still weak but improving, sat in an old armchair wrapped in a thick quilt. The pain in his body had dulled, but his eyes held a light they hadn't that morning. A kind of peace was settling over him, a sense that the storm, both outside and within, was finally lifting. As the scent of onions and herbs filled the room, Leah sat across from him, nursing a cup of tea. Tell me more about my grandfather, she said softly. I've heard bits and pieces from my mom before she passed, but it's like you knew a different version of him. One I want to understand. Alan looked into the fire, his voice slow and filled with memory. I met Henry when I was 21. I'd just gotten out of jail, petty theft, stupid stuff. No one would give me work. I was sleeping in alleys, stealing bread, and convinced the world had nothing good left in it. Then one freezing night, I passed out in front of this very cabin's porch. Thought I'd die there. His voice caught. Henry found me. Took me in. No questions. Fed me. Let me stay. Said everyone deserved a second chance, especially the ones who didn't believe they did. Leah felt a lump form in her throat. She could almost picture it, her grandfather in his younger days, offering a hand to a stranger, just like she had done. Alan's hand trembled as he reached for his tea. I kept thinking he'd kick me out. But he didn't. He let me stay for 3 months. Taught me to fix things, to earn a living. Even helped me get a job at the sawmill. Leah smiled gently. That sounds like him. Alan chuckled, a low, grateful sound. Before I left, he gave me something. A letter. Said it belonged to his wife and that someday I'd know what to do with it. For years, I kept it with me. Through good jobs, bad choices, lost homes, lost people. I never let go of it. He looked over at Leah, eyes glassy. When I got old and started thinking my time was coming, I knew I had to find him. I didn't expect him to be gone. But then, there was you. Leah looked down, blinking hard. Her heart ached in the best kind of way, an ache that came with understanding, with connection. Mia's voice piped up from the couch. Mommy, is he gonna stay with us? Leah glanced at Alan. He was watching her with the eyes of a man who didn't expect anything more from life, but who quietly hoped. I think he should, she said, smiling softly. If he wants to. Alan said nothing, but his eyes closed, and a quiet tear slid down his cheek. It wasn't just a cabin anymore. It was a place of beginning again, just as it had been for him decades ago. And now, for all of them. The morning sun rose pale behind drifting clouds, casting golden light through the frosted windows of the cabin. Inside, life had taken on a quiet, purposeful rhythm. Leah stirred oatmeal at the stove while Mia helped Alan tie the laces of his old boots that had belonged to her grandfather, now passed down like a memory that refused to fade. Alan had been with them for 3 weeks now. His strength had returned, slowly but surely. His cough was less frequent, his face less sunken, and he'd taken to chopping wood when he could, insisting it made him feel alive again. He'd even taught Mia how to fish in the frozen creek, laughing like he hadn't in years. One afternoon, as Leah went through a dusty storage chest in the attic, she stumbled upon a box sealed with yellowed tape and marked private. Inside were faded photographs, a small Bible, and letters, dozens of them. Each addressed to her grandfather, from people all over the state. They were thank you letters. Stories of second chances. Of quiet rescues and anonymous gifts. People her grandfather had helped, mentored, or saved, without ever mentioning a word. One letter in particular made her breath hitch. It was from her own mother, written when Leah was just a baby. I know you worry I'll never forgive you for how things ended with Mom. But you raised me alone, Dad, and somehow gave me enough love for 2 parents. I see the man you are, and I hope someday Leah will too. Tears welled in Leah's eyes. The ache in her chest burst wide open with both sorrow and newfound pride. She finally understood. Her grandfather hadn't just lived in this house. He had loved from this house. Quietly. Deeply. Fiercely. And now, as if fate had come full circle, that love was breathing again, through Alan's laughter, through Mia's joy, through her own healing. That night, the wind howled against the cabin once more, but the hearth glowed with warmth, and a pot of stew simmered over the flames. Alan stepped onto the porch and looked out into the snow. Leah joined him, wrapping a blanket over both their shoulders. The sky was alive with stars. I never said thank you, he whispered. For saving me. Not just from the snow, but from being forgotten. You don't need to, Leah replied. We're family now. He nodded slowly. Your grandfather would be proud of you. And for the first time in years, Leah believed it. Because sometimes, salvation doesn't come with loud thunder or bright lights. Sometimes, it walks in quietly, cold, broken, and clutching a letter. But it changes everything. To experience more stories that touch your heart and open your soul, subscribe now to Storytelling and Beyond. Let every story take you somewhere unforgettable.